Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and other Republicans around the country who are working actively day in, day out to restrict voting access claim they are deeply offended that anyone would paint them with the same brush as Jim Crow. They say they're outraged their efforts have been labeled as racist voter suppression as they work to make it harder for people to vote in ways that will almost certainly disproportionately affect black voters.
Georgians will no doubt be soon overwhelmed with fancy TV ads, mailers, and radio spots attacking this common sense election reform measure. In fact, left-wing groups funded by out-of-state billionaires are already doing that now. According to them, if you support voter ID for absentee ballots, you're a racist. According to them, if you believe in protecting the security and sanctity of the ballot box, you're a, quote, Jim Crow in a suit and tie, end quote.
If Brian Kemp's goal over the last 24 hours is not to recall the worst aspects of racialized voter suppression, white supremacy, and the fight against Democratic representation in the Jim Crow South, well, I gotta say, he's doing a very poor job of that. Last night, as you can see in this video, a black state representative named Park Cannon was arrested and then dragged out of the Capitol building because she had the temerity to knock on the door to the governor's office where he was signing the new bill restricting voting rights, hidden away from the public eye. Today, Governor Kemp was asked about what happened, and he claimed Representative Cannon had been violent.
Why are you arresting her?
As far as Representative Cannon, you'd have to question or ask the Georgia Department of Public Safety about, what happened there. It's unfortunate that a sitting state representative would actually stomp and kick a Georgia State Patrol officer.
Representative Park Cannon, an elected official who just tried to go into the room where the governor was signing a piece of legislation, is now facing a felony charge. Felony obstruction of law enforcement, as well as a misdemeanor preventing or disrupting General Assembly sessions or other meetings of members. Governor Kemp probably should have put some more thought into how he staged this whole thing, since he seems so sensitive to the optics. This is the picture the governor tweeted showing him signing the bill, surrounded by 6 white men, a picture that presumably was not intended to invoke Jim Crow in a state where about 30% of the population is black, and one party, the Republican Party, is nearly entirely white. And the backdrop there is really the pièce de résistance that also definitively should not evoke bad memories of the Old South. That painting there in the background, that is of a slave plantation in Wilkes County, Georgia, where at least 100 slaves owned by the Calloway family were first forced to toil over 56 acres of land. Earlier today, President Biden was asked what he thought about the new law, and he did not mince words.
It's an atrocity. The idea, if you want any indication that it has nothing to do with fairness, nothing to do with decency, they passed a law saying you can't provide water for people standing in line while they're waiting to vote. You don't need anything else to know that this is nothing but punitive, designed to keep people from voting. You can't provide water for people about to vote. Give me a break.
Now, Kemp and his fellow Republicans are pushing these restrictions over the objections of their own voters, as far as we can tell from the polling. New polling from TargetSmart on behalf of Fair Fight Action, the voting rights organization founded by Stacey Abrams, so they have a dog in this fight, we should be clear. The polling finds that 77% of Georgia voters oppose the part of the bill the president mentioned, criminalizing the distribution of food and water to people standing in line waiting to vote. That includes 2/3 of self-identified Republican voters. 76% of Georgia voters oppose allowing the state legislature to take election authority away from local elections officials, counties, and the Secretary of State. 71% oppose shortening the early voting period because, well, all kinds of people use that. And it tears down Kemp and Republicans' own nonsensical arguments that restrictions are necessary to restore integrity or trust in the system. They know as well as anybody that the system already works. It already has integrity and trust, well, among the people not given to the big lie told by the president, as Georgia Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock explained today.
If there's one thing that's clear, it's that the Georgia election was certainly free of any consequential fraud. We counted the votes not once, not twice, but 3 times. So what's the purpose of all of this? They don't like the outcome, and so this is democracy in reverse, where politicians have decided that instead of the voters picking their representatives, the representatives have a right to cherry pick their voters. It's un-American, it's anti-democratic. We have to resist it.
It's important to remember why we are at this point, right? It's largely because of a multi-decade-long project to tear apart the legal regime of the Voting Rights Act, which was successful, that project, in large part thanks to Chief Justice John Roberts, who famously said things have changed in the South when gutting a key provision of the act. That's what John Roberts and Brian Kemp and all these Republicans want you to believe, as stroke by stroke, they make it harder to vote. Joining me now are 2 people watching this situation very closely. Democratic House Majority Whip James Clyburn of South Carolina and Congresswoman Nikema Williams of Georgia, who occupies the seat formerly held by John Lewis, is also chair of the Georgia Democratic Party. It's great to have you both. Congressman Clyburn, maybe let me start with you. I mean, you have a lot of protestations from Kemp and others saying it's insane and absurd and almost libelous to read any kind of race or discrimination or any bad faith into this law. You've been in politics for a very long time in the American South. What do you say to that?
Poppycock, and that's to be polite. Thank you very much for having me, Chris. You know, I think that all of us have been aware of this governor for a long time. When he was Secretary of State, we saw his shenanigans then. Nobody believes that he did not steal the election fair and square from Stacey Abrams. And what he's doing now is codifying that which he used his administrative authority to do when he was Secretary of State, when he took so many people off the road. And I guarantee you that was a difference in his having won that election and having stolen it fair and square. And so what he's doing now, that he has the authority of the governorship, he is codifying all of that he wished he had to work with before, and he's now putting in place advantages for himself and other people who look and think like him. And I think the people know that. And what we've got to do now is hope that the Supreme Court of the United States, that once said about 9 years ago in Shelby v. Holden, that things had changed. Well, they changed again. And I hope that the Chief Justice is observing this change.
Just quickly, Congressman, because you said steal fair and square, I just want to be clear about what you're alleging here. I think my understanding is you're saying that in purging voter rolls, the use it or lose it provision of Georgia law, such that if people don't vote in consecutive elections, they get knocked off the rolls, that was the decisive difference in Brian Kemp's race against Stacey Abrams. That's what you're saying.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And I've been around this business a long time, and I know what purging is used for. And we all saw how strategic that purging was. And we all saw that a lot of people got purged who should not have been purged. And when you do these kinds of things, like not allowing people to pass along water to somebody standing in line to vote, if someone gets overly thirsty, what would you do to a person standing in line if someone says, you can have my place in line so you can go to the restroom? That's the kind of stuff we do here in South Carolina, and I'm sure they do it everywhere else. I could just see that being a felony as well. So these things, I hope that all of the courts, all the way up to the Supreme Court, are taking notice, because it's time for us to say to people like Brian Kemp, enough is enough.